It looked like somebody was bent over and had their head in the window of the deer blind. It either heard me or smelt me, and he pulled his head out of the tent and stood straight up, and that shocked me. They don't make people that big.
The way it moved, almost as if it was gliding across the beach. I've never seen anything move like that in my life. They were screaming at each other in gibberish. It sounded like a language, and they were chuntering away back and forwards, back and forwards, back and forwards. I know what a bear looks like, and there is no way on this planet that what I saw were bears.
911, what are you reporting?
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Zia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
This is Jacob from John Day, Oregon, and you're listening to Sasquatch Chronicles.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you tonight. Roland returns, and most of you might remember him from the Unnatural Fear episode. And Roland grew up 2 miles from Skinwalker Ranch. A lot of weird things have happened to this guy. This guy's seen a lot of bizarre things, as you can imagine, living next to Skinwalker Ranch. And tonight he's going to share some more of the stranger things that have happened to him. We're also going to go into a few more Sasquatch encounters while he was out there as a hunting guide. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. And if you get a chance, check out sasquatchchronicles.com. You can become a member and get additional shows. Let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome Roland to the show. Roland, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being here, Roland. And I know a lot of the fans, the feedback I got, people practically demanded you come back on. And tonight we're going to go into a little bit more about living next to this Skinwalker Ranch and some of the weird things that happened to you while living there. And I know you're going to be on the History Channel's Skinwalker Ranch. Before we went on the air, you and I were talking about this strange event that happened to you as a child. And for lack of a better term, that you were abducted. If you would, do you mind telling us what happened and just kind of walk us into what you can remember?
Yeah. I was around about 10 years old, and it was in the 70s, late 70s, at my age. And, I had been around that ranch, and from what people had told me, they said that something had latched on or followed me home. And at that time, I didn't know. I was 10 years old, somewhere around there. And what had started happening was at night around, at nighttime, I'm guessing, I wouldn't know what time it was, but I would find myself outside, not knowing how I got there. That's the hard part, is not knowing how I got out there. Finding bruises on my wrist, my ankles. Felt like something was holding me on my neck. And whenever I fought, this happened to me several times. Whenever I fought to get out of it, I'd find myself waking up, and I'd be outside, either in a field or a few times in my neighbor's field, and having to go home. The first time was I had to wake my brother up. He wasn't, being an older brother, he was the nicest, waking him up and pounding on a window and asking me how the hell I got out there, and then I learned to leave a key outside because I didn't know when this was going to happen. It happened. I would go through this from the age 10 all the way up till I was, I think, 18, and I left to college. And after I left to college, it stopped. But it would be, and it happened several times to me. I would be going to sleep, and I would the only way I'd know is I'd look down and I'd see my body. It would be laying in the field. And then I knew I would try to be thinking, and all I would see after I see my body, and all of a sudden I would be turned over. Something would turn me over, and I'd be looking up, and I'd be just a big light in my face. And then I would start struggling, and something in my head would say, "Fight! You've got to fight! You got to fight!" But I couldn't move very much because felt like I was tied down somehow, and something in my head just telling me keep fighting. And the more I fought, then all of a sudden I'd wake up and I would be in the field or somewhere waking up outside my house, and I don't have no answers. I'm looking for answers on that. That's something that's I don't know. It seems like I can handle all the Bigfoot stuff in the world, but that stuff, that really gets to me. That one still, I can't look at, when that fire in the sky, when they show that little alien dude, I can't look at that. It bugs me for some reason. I don't know why. It's just something I'm terrified. Yeah.
Can I ask you real quick, Roland? Is there something that happened to you that you can pinpoint prior to when these abductions, I guess, for lack of a better term, started happening to you?
I had been on the ranch. I'd been on the ranch, and that's about all I can say. Is I'd been on the ranch and came home, and some incidents had happened, and I came home. And that's the only time I can think back is when that started. If this stuff started, and it wouldn't be only just that. I'd be laying there and I'd hear things like tapping on my window, and then walking around and something scratching on the walls outside. And then I could hear, I don't know if they were saying it, talking, or just in my head that, come out. Why don't you come out? We'll take care of you. Why don't you come out here? And I would be just, it would happen to me 2 or 3 times a week. And it sucked because I didn't know what was going to happen that night. And I'd have my dog stay with me because once the dog started growling, I knew something was coming. And it would terrify me. And, being 10, 11, 12, going through that and not knowing what's going to happen or what's going to be out there, or why are these things talking to me, and just trying to figure out what's going to happen to me next. Or I know what I couldn't sleep hardly. I would be, basically on the edge every night. Any noise, anything would wake me up, any movement, because I didn't know what was coming, or if I was going to be waking up outside and not knowing how I got out there. And it was tough childhood dealing with that stuff and not being able to tell anybody, because I would be ridiculed or told it was the devil, and stop talking about that, back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And it was hard.
It's strange. The light part fascinates me, almost like it sounds like a UFO abduction. I was talking to this little girl one time, and I don't trust Sasquatch. I don't know what Sasquatch is, and that's why I'm very, very cautious when it comes to Sasquatch. I know people have different opinions than me, and that's fine. I was talking to this little girl, and she's probably 9, 10 years old, and her parents put her on the phone with me, and for obvious reasons, I didn't put her on the air. I'm not going to put a 10-year-old on the air. This little girl knows, she could tell you about the face of this creature. She could tell you about every little wrinkle on its face. She could tell you, this kid had way too many details. It wasn't like an overactive imagination. And the parents found some evidence to support what the daughter was saying. But one of the things that the kid said to me was, Sasquatch, she didn't use the term Sasquatch, she used, a child's term for it, but she said basically it's motioning for her to come outside. It wants to play outside. And it would tap on her window 2-3 o'clock in the morning. And I said, well, what do you mean it wants you to go outside and play? And she said, well, it'll motion for me to come out and play, almost like when your mother's motioning for you to come here. And the kid said other times I hear her say, come outside and play. And I said, well, how can you hear her through the window? And she goes, I don't know. I can just hear her talking. And she's saying, come out and play. The other strange incident I was starting to tell you before we went on the air, I talked to this gentleman, and he talked about this creature they would constantly come up to this kid's window at night. He's a grown man now, but when he was a kid, and one of the things that happened to him a lot was he would end up outside, and he would have no idea how he got out there. There was one incident where he's probably 9 years old, and he's wearing the old jammies, they used to have back in the 80s and 70s and 80s, where it was like a full jumpsuit, it had the rubber bottom feet. He said he vividly remembers standing out in the snow looking up at this creature. And it was a female creature. He said it was absolutely female. He only remembers bits and pieces of it. Next thing you know, he's in his bed, and he thought he had a bad dream until he realized that from about the knee down, he was sopping wet from walking around in the snow all night. These aliens, these demons, these dogmen, these skinwalkers, these Sasquatch, you can draw a lot of very odd coincidences between all of them, in my opinion, from all the people I've talked to. There's times where I'll talk to someone, I'll go, oh, I heard that over here, but we weren't talking about Sasquatch, we were talking about demons. Or I overheard about this over here, but we were talking about UFOs and aliens. Do you think it's all kind of related?
I don't know on that portion, because where I did live, they say it's a corridor for the Skinwalker. I can't remember how it's a pathway, or
like a portal.
It's where where I live in that river bottom, that's the portal of where it is, of the Skinwalkers. And so and I would see things down in that river bottom also, majority of it was in the evening times, but that's what I was told later, much later, that that's a portal for the Skinwalkers to come through, to get to the Ute reservation is in that river bottom area.
If something followed you home, do you think it was a Skinwalker, or do you think, because there's a lot of alien activity on that Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, as far as lights in the sky, people report all kinds of strange beings running around that Skinwalker Ranch. As far as something following you home, what in your heart, what do you think followed you home?
My thinking, it was before talking to people, I thought, to me, it was a spirit that followed, some kind of spirit or entity followed me home. But there's a few people I talked to, and they just don't know. It was, some of them say, oh, it was an abduction. So I honestly don't know. I've never talked about this to anybody. My wife's the only one. she knows, I've tried to talk to people and they look at me like you're a freaking weirdo, and I've lost friends over me saying things, or people, alienated me of, don't go on him, he's a freaking weirdo. And they'd ask, and then I'd tell them, and they wouldn't even come around me anymore. So I learned at a young age, don't say anything to anybody. And I've held on to this for, and I kind of just forgot about it, didn't want to think about it, put it away for years and years, and not wanting to know about this stuff, and then all these, then you started hearing all these blogs and about the Skinwalker stuff, or what is it, missing, was it 411 or something, or
Yeah.
those files. And then then this Skinwalker Ranch stuff started, and it seemed like it started to open all this stuff up again, and things started coming back to me, and I'm just like, well, maybe, it's time that I start saying something, because I've never said anything. My wife's the only one that's heard stuff, and she's been very supportive of it. And how do I go about it? Basically, how do I?
Yeah, I get what you mean. You're looking for answers, and I'm really,
yeah.
I sincerely mean this when I say I really appreciate sharing it, because I've heard it many times off the air, and I'm perplexed. I don't have an answer for anyone, but I've heard of these weird, especially kids, where. And it's adults telling me now, back when I was a kid, that, ended up in the middle of nowhere, and I don't know how I got there in the middle of the night. I wanted to ask you, and I don't recommend being hypnotized, and I'm not even sure I could be hypnotized, because my attention span is that of about a 5-year-old. So I'm not even sure I could be hypnotized. But have you ever thought about doing that to see if there's any hidden memories in there that are not in your current consciousness?
Yeah, a few people said they thought that'd help, and they'd talk, but I haven't heard back from them. And then, because if I do, I want to someone that knows what they're doing, and not, and that's the hard part, is who do you trust, or who can you go to do that? And us being in a small rural area, it's kind of hard to find anybody like that, here.
Yeah, no, and I understand that. Was there any other marks on your body that you remember, or even something that you have to this day beyond those bruises on your?
I had cuts on my arm, but I played them off. My parents would ask me, how did that happen? I would just say, I was playing down at the river bottom. Russian olives cut me, and I would have small cuts on my arms, my shoulders, underneath by my ribs, on my stomach. And I just didn't know how I got them. And what do you say to an adult when they ask you? And so I just lied, and that's the best way I could have dealt with it. And I wore a lot of times when I had them, I wore long sleeves so no one would see, and just hid them from my parents, or siblings, so they wouldn't see, and then I wouldn't have to make up a lie on what was it, because I didn't know either.
Yeah, I feel so, my heart goes out to you, because I know your mother was a Christian woman, and I'm sure she was a great woman, but most Christians it's almost shame, because it's like, well, that's demonic. What have you been doing? Almost kind of,
yes.
That sort of conversation starts to happen. And it's like, well, you didn't do anything. How long do you remember this going on? I know you said it quit when you moved, but
it went on from my guest bed is 10 years old to 18 when I left to college. When I left to college, then I came back about 4 years later, and then it started back up because I moved back home with my parents and had a job, and then I finally, I think after a year, I moved away. I didn't want to be down there. They asked me if I wanted that house because they were moving, and I was like, no way, I want to be around here anymore. And I left. I moved away about 30, 40 miles away. And after I moved, it stopped. And I didn't want to bring my children up in an environment like that. And I didn't want them to have anything to even close to that stuff happening to them because how tough it was for me.
Yeah, and I respect that. And you're a good man for sharing it, Roland. I mean, I can't even imagine trying to, especially when something terrible is happening to you and you have no one to talk to, and you know the minute you open your mouth, people are just going to tear you apart on it. I mean, I can't imagine a worse kind of hell. One question I want to ask you about Skinwalker Ranch, and I'm not sure if you're able to answer this or not with regard to the TV thing. What the hell's going on at Skinwalker Ranch? It seems like not only is there skinwalkers, but there's UFO activity, there's dogmen, there's lights, there's, and I don't even, what does a portal even mean, really? But on that property, I mean, there's been several eyewitnesses that have come forward and said, I ran into this or I ran into that. Is it some weird portal that's open to like another dimension, I guess, for lack of a better term?
I kind of feel there is, there's something there that, like the Skinwalker, they travel from one place to another, and it opens up, and off that, the ranch, and it may sound pretty weird, but me and my cousin, we did go into, well, I didn't know, I don't know what it was, to be honest. And we were hunting, and we shot a rabbit and it went into a hole, and we went in there and it ended up being a great big hole. And we crawled down to retrieve that rabbit, and it was a great big hole in the ground. And we just kind of looked at each other and we backed off. We didn't even want to be in there. And we went back the next day and it was completely gone. So I don't know what that was.
The hole was gone.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I just got a bad feeling not to even go towards that area. And we backed off and left. And so, and it's, you have, you hear those different realms are just outside our vision of reality and where some of these other creatures live. It may be that, there's a lot of things that go on there, but you get all these people that, well, I want to go there. I want to see this. I want it. And it doesn't happen. They may go there and may not ever see anything. It's always, I guess, always fun until it happens. Or, and I hear other people that I've talked to that they've gone there and then all of a sudden something followed them home and they were hearing knocking on their doors and at night. And then, one guy told me he went there just at the gates, and he said that he went home and his kid said, how come you're not letting those kids come and play? And the guy goes, what are you talking about? And he goes, there's been kids outside at night. They wanted me to go play with them. And he said that freaked him out. He says, no way I will ever go back there again. So I don't know. I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those things, be careful what you wish for because you might just get it.
Yeah.
It is strange, though. In a lot of paranormal or ghost encounters, one thing I find very strange is the animals, like dogs or cats, seem to be able to see it, even though we can't. They seem to react to it, almost like in a lot of ghost encounters or whatever, people have pets, and it seems like the dog starts growling at nothing, or the cat starts freaking out over nothing. It is strange that we can't see into that realm. I want to get into shadow people and also Sasquatch, but have you ever had any encounters with spirits or demons or whatever label people want to put on it?
We did. Yeah. I've had, like I said, I've got about 40 years of experience and stuff, and we did have one where me and my, and this would be more of the spirit or something down in that southern area. We were working out one night, the three of us, and we came back late about midnight, and we just had supper. We were getting ready to go to bed, and just went in our trailer, and we had some older guys in their distant tent. They were maybe about 100 yards off, and we were just getting ready to down. We were laying down and just joking between each other. Then all of a sudden we heard, "Help me!" And he's like, we went all quiet. I heard, "Help me, please!" And I was like, "Shh, did you guys hear that?" And they go, "Yeah." And he goes, "God, help me, please, help me, help me, help me!" And then you could hear like bare feet running towards our camper. And it was like, what the hell's going on? And you hear the feet, and then it was a lady just screaming, just, "Help me, oh God, help me, help me, help me, help me." And then she hit the trailer wall, and was like, what the freak? And my buddy was laying by the door, and I said, get the door. And he goes, no. And he's like, no. And I said, no, hold the door. And he goes, why? And I said, well, whatever's out there, I don't want it coming in. And so we ran over there, and I grabbed the door handle, and I was just holding it, making sure it locked it. And all of a sudden it started rattling, something trying to open it in. And she just continually just, "God, help me, help me, help me, help me, help me, help me." And I'm like, and we were looking at each other, and do we go out there? And, like, oh, hell no. There's no other lady out here. We're quite a ways out. And then she started hitting the trailer, just, "Help me, God, help me, God, help me, God, help me." Then all of a sudden she started walking off, and you just hear her just saying that through the woods, just walking away. And it was loud, and it just started echoing, just, "Help me, help me, help me." And we just laid there and like, what in the heck just happened? And we couldn't figure that out. And so finally we went to sleep about 3 a.m. and then we got up, and then those older guys had come over to us, and we were just getting breakfast, and they go, "Well, what are you guys messing around with us at night?" I was like, "What?" He goes, "Why'd you guys coming around and hitting our tent and pulling on our tent? We were sleeping in our tent, and somebody pulled our tent to the side." I was like, "Dude, we weren't over there messing." I said, "And we're not going to go over there at 1 a.m. We're too tired to go mess with you guys." I said, we had our own little episode, and we told them what had happened. They didn't say anything. And we just, and they didn't know what to think about that either.
What made you think it wasn't just a human woman coming up asking for help? What was it about it that made you? I'm just curious. Where we work at, it's probably 2.5 hours just to get there on dirt road, and there's only one way in. And we had come in, and if somebody's camping, there's only a few places where you can camp. Majority of the time when people go down there, they usually go fishing or something, and they don't stay in those areas where we usually go because we're usually doing wildlife work, and they don't stay in those areas. That's the reason why. And we didn't see any other campers at that time. I gotcha. Yeah, it's strange, and in some Sasquatch encounters, especially people out in the woods, they'll hear, well, I won't even say Sasquatch encounters. There's Sasquatch around someone's property, and one of the things that is reported a lot is a female from the forest saying, "Help me." The other thing that gets reported a lot is a baby or a child crying. It makes me wonder if it's a trap, because as a normal human being, if someone's saying, "Help me" in the woods, you're going to go look. And I'm not saying this normal, like what you were just talking about, but if you're out on your property and you hear a woman saying, "Help me," in the woods, you're going to go look. Or if you hear a baby or a child crying, you're going to go look. It makes me wonder if it's like a trap or an ambush.
Yeah. And that's it. We just end up having just a really creepy feeling. Like it wasn't good. Especially if we let whoever it was or whatever it was come into that door. It was just a feeling we had, and that's why I ran over to the door and was holding the knob, because I just had a feeling that if it comes in, it's not going to be good. Yeah,
it's so strange, and you hear that a lot where people think it's Sasquatch, and who knows? What do I know? But they'll report the door handle being shaken, almost like it's trying to open it. And when they go out there, this thing will take off running or it's gone. It always strikes me odd that they don't come in, that they will. It makes me wonder if there's like a set of rules, like they have to be invited in order to, you know what I'm trying to say? Even like a spirit, almost like it kind of has to be, you hear about these black-eyed kids and they'll come up and they'll ask to come in the house and use the phone. And why don't they just bum rush their way in? I guess the point I'm trying to make is, I wonder if there's a set of rules they have to play by, just a side thought.
Yeah. I wouldn't have any idea on that, on something like that. And we did, and I had a buddy of mine when we were down there. He was, we were working late and he was coming out late by himself. And he had got a flat tire. And so he was down there fixing a flat tire. I think it was like at 11 at night. And he had told me that he was changing the tire. He got a flat tire, so he was changing it. And he had a little headlamp. And he was getting that. And he had a jack on there. And he had just got done putting the third lug nuts on. And he had reached over to find the lug nuts and turned his hand over. And something had put lug nuts in his hand. And he freaked out. He just jumped in his truck, started, and he was gone. And he had on 3 lug nuts, had the jack on. He was out of there. He was out there, and you would not catch him down there. He would leave before it got dark, no matter what. He did not want to be down there. And we knew after a while that whatever it was really scared him, and especially being at night and something putting lug nuts in your hands,
Yeah, no kidding. That would terrify me. Before we get to the shadow people, was there any more incidences throughout your life regarding spirits that you've run into?
There was a few where we would have, we was doing some work on the spring and we'd stayed in a small cabin, and we were, had some summer youth staying with us and helping and showing them how to, what we did and how we did the springs and everything. We had stayed down there before, and we kind of fixed that cabin up where we could stay in there and just get out of the weather. And we went in there that night and we closed the door and we put like a chair against it to hold the door. And some majority was just, was because of bears. And we had our guns there, and we just told us boys, we're just putting it there, just precaution. If a bear comes by and he comes knocking, we'll have enough time to, and I said the majority of the time, no bears are going to come around here, because we parked our trucks up along the front of the door. So we was just all laying there, and about 10, 11 o'clock, we was getting ready for bed, and we was laying there, and all of a sudden the door just slams open, and those kids just up screaming, freaking out. I ran over to the door and I was like, what the heck? And told my buddies, and I said, oh, it's just a gust of wind, boys, not to get them scared or anything. That's just a gust of wind. That's just a gust of wind. But we went outside and there was no wind, no blowing, nothing, no gust of wind, no nothing. And so I told my buddy, all right, that was kind of weird. So we had blocked that door and put a table against it and the chair, and we had fallen asleep. That morning I woke up just right at daylight, and the door was completely open. The table, chairs, and everything were completely moved out of the way. No slide marks, no nothing. Just like something picked it up and moved it, and the door is open. And we all slept through it. Don't know how that happened. Don't know anything about that. But that was kind of weird. That was a little weird.
It reminds me of the guy I just had on. He was sleeping in his tent. Something put branches all over his tent, and middle of the night, something moved all his stuff right in front of his tent to where he couldn't get out, and he slept through it. How he slept through it, I have no idea. But I believe the guy. I think, he even has a video showing the next morning of what happened, and but he has no clue what happened to him,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On the reservation, has there been any incidences of demonic possession?
I don't know about, that stuff, because of that. If it has to be do anything with that, they would probably fall back on the Skinwalker. If something happened like that, that would be towards a Skinwalker or something.
Yeah, I gotcha. One of the other questions I wanted to ask you was regarding the shadow people. I've talked to a lot of guys in the military, and when they're out doing training and training exercises out on military reservations or in the middle of nowhere, I've had a lot of the guys, they'll ask me, do you think this is Sasquatch? But it sounds like weird shadow people chasing these people around in the forest. I mean, I guess I don't want to, I know I sound like your mom, but I think it sounds like demons out there in the forest. You know what I mean? I have a hard time putting it in a box. I say that respectfully, of course. I have a hard time putting it in a box of like, what do you put a shadow person? It sounds demonic. Have you ever encountered the shadow people?
Yeah, I have, and it seems like it's more of the realm of just outside of your peripheral vision. If you look directly into it, you won't see anything. But if you keep your eyes forward, but kind of looking off to the side, you'll see movement and things, moving around or following you. But if you turn and you look in that direction, you won't be able to see it. So I've always learned to keep my, looking forward, but kind of not letting them see me. It's hard to on the peripheral vision portion, because you'll see movement. And to me, what I was taught is just leave me alone, go do your thing. I'm not here to harm you, and that's how I dealt with them, because it was always down in some of those areas. You would walk into the forest and you would see something like moving tree to tree, but it was always on my peripheral vision. When I would go to face it, nothing. There would be nothing there at all. Or in a room, you'd go into the room, or if the door is open, like you'd see, and there's cabins we used to stay in, or something, it would slide in off to the side. I would see things like that just moving, or it would move between trucks, but only on my peripheral vision.
Did you, Roland, did you ever listen to my Confessions of a Pastor episode?
I think we did.
It's fascinating. When he talked about demons, he talked about that. As you were sitting there talking, I was replaying what he was talking about, and he said with demonic entities, that they're always in your peripheral vision. And he talked about different demons having different power. Of course, this is his opinion, but he talked about, it can either be really small, like a cat, size of a cat, or it can be large. And it's strange because he talked about that exact same thing.
Yeah. And that's what I would see. It's something that was either very small or it was large, going through shadow. And or if the shadow was a small shadow I had to get to, it would turn itself smaller to go to each shadow. But if we turned a flashlight over there or to go look, or just, whatever light, nothing at all. And once we turn around and start doing our stuff, it would come out on our side of our vision. And I would just always talk to it and tell it, leave me alone. I don't want nothing from you, and I'm not here to cause you any harm. You need to leave. majority of the time they've kept their distance and never bothered me.
Yeah, it's still terrifying though, when you know something's there, the other question I want to ask you, a lot of times regarding, I'll say Sasquatch, and I kind of want to talk about these other encounters that you've had. There's eyewitnesses that'll report Sasquatch with glowing red eyes. And I've asked many eyewitnesses, could it be eye shine? Could it be, you were an outdoorsman way more than I was. I'm a Boy Scout compared to what you did. And you know full well what eye shine is. And there's a lot of these hunters who talk about seeing these creatures and they have glowing red eyes. What's your take on that?
The only ones that I've seen with glowing red eyes are the Sasquatch or the Dogmen. Those are the ones that had red eyes that I had encountered, because majority of them were, I'd be hunting just right at evening and they would be just far enough out you could see a figure, but you could see the ears like a dog on their head, mainly just because of the light, the moonlight, or it was just that dark where you could see a little bit. And the dogs that I had would go nuts. They would just be growling. That started when I was at a very young age too, just going fishing, or I would be rabbit hunting or doing whatever hunting, and I'd be starting to head home before dark, and all of a sudden the dogs would start growling off to the side. And I always had 2 or 3 dogs with me all the time for that reason, because they know what's going on. They can sense these things way faster than I could, and I always paid attention to that. And I had to. I felt like I had to have that edge so nothing would happen to me. Sometimes I'd see that they would be across the river, kind of just looking out of that brush, and these red eyes would be looking, and the dogs would go nuts, and I would start just throwing lead. And only thing I had at that time was just a little 22, but I would start shooting, and you hear it just screaming, and the dogs would go after it, and you could hear them fight, and then I would take off. And sometimes a lot of times a dog would not come back. You could hear them fighting, and I would leave. I would go running. And that's the only ones that I've seen with the red eyes. The other one that I seen when I was younger, by the trees, that one, it just had an eye shine, just like I'd see it in a bear or a deer. And that's what caught our attention, was that eye shine on that one.
Yeah, it's so strange. A lot of these entities, they seem to be on a spiritual level, but what's weird is they also seem to be on a physical level, where they can be shot, they can be hurt, or it appears that way anyway.
Yeah.
Going back to Bigfoot for a moment, tell me about the encounter you had with, you were on a hunt and one of your guides was walking back to the truck. If you would kind of take us back to that moment, tell us what happened.
Yeah, we would, at times we'd have radios with our guides, or if they came in late, we'd go and we would know where they would be going and taking their hunters. So if something happened or if they never showed up at a certain time, we'd go and look for them. And the hunter was coming. There was a guide and one hunter, 2 guides and 1 hunter, and they were walking out. And the guy, he just told the hunter, "Okay, stay here with him. I'm gonna haul Bud back so I can get the truck and bring it back to you." So he started at a really quick walk, and the other guy says, "Well, let's just take our time, because not a lot of those guys, they're not in the best of shape, and we don't want them to be dead on the first or second day." So the guy walked off, and at a fast pace, and he noticed maybe 100 yards in front of him, there was a figure standing there. And he thought it was one of us going to see if they needed help. And he goes, "Hey, I don't need no help. We're coming out. I'm just walking down to get my truck." And he noticed when he started talking, it looked at it. It kind of like turned its head and was looking at him. And then it started backing up into the trees. Then he thought, well, why would any of us do that? And he started going wide, taking a wide berth around it. And he says, hey, we don't need no help. Why, what's going on? It just kept backing up. And then he started almost getting straight on it, and it started just backing up into the trees. He said he'd noticed it was like 7-8 feet tall, big. And that's when he's like, oh, okay, that's not one of the guys. And so he walked around it, kept going, and just kept an eye on it. And he called back to the guys on the radio and just said, hey, we've just keep coming through. There's something there. Just keep going through. And he didn't really get to tell him what it was, but he just kept an eye on it, and it just stayed right in the dark of those trees, and it just watched him. And he said it gave him the creeps, because all it did was just stand behind a tree and watch him. And he said it was huge. It was just a big, tall figure standing behind a tree watching him. And he ran down, got his truck, and the guide and the hunter came by, and what was going on? He goes, oh, no. He said, oh, I just saw a bear. I just wanted you guys keep your eye. And he didn't say anything much. And then he came back to camp, and he told me what was going on. And, I just listened to his story. And I was like, wow, okay, well, all right, that's, put that away, and we'll remember that area, just to be a heads up on that. And if anybody else goes in that area, just when we told them, and just a heads up, there's something there, and we never put it as a Sasquatch, we just I don't know what it was, and a lot of things that I had seen or found, I put it back then, before a lot of this, the podcast and all this, is I put it as just, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. It was weird, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, and I know we talked about that on the first show. I'm curious your opinion. What, in some situations, I absolutely believe that Sasquatch attacks people. In a lot of situations, though, it seems like if you don't engage with them, they won't engage with you, for the most part. Not always, but I will say most of the time. Why is it? Do you think that creature didn't harm that gentleman?
And see, on where we go at, I've never heard of an instance where anybody's got attacked or anybody's got hurt. I've had rocks thrown at me, but that same instant, I was like, I don't know what that is. Let's just get the heck out of here. And we always talk to it. All right, I'm leaving. We're out of here. We didn't mean to bother you, and we'd leave. And I know other people have heard things and seen things, and somewhat in family cultures we just get told to talk to it and back off and tell them we're not here to harm you. We're just passing through. If we disturbed you, we're sorry. We're going by. And that's how I've always approached it, is okay, and talk to it. Or, even if it's a bear or whatever's out there, talk to it and tell, okay, I'm not here to harm you. We're going by. And brother, sister, we're going by. And that's always, I've always approached it, and I've never heard, and then, not saying it hasn't happened, but that's how I've always dealt with it, and has never heard, but we've had people in the upper Uintas, people disappear and kids disappear without a trace. It's those ones, you just never know what happened on those.
I think most of their behavior is meant to intimidate you. And they do a good job of it, by the way. But I think most of the Sasquatch's behavior is meant to intimidate you, to make you leave. And I think when people get in situations where they don't leave, or they start firing off shots, then it becomes a war, and it's a war they're going to lose. That's just my experience from talking to so many different eyewitnesses. And I know you guys baited bears out there too as well while you were hunting. Tell me about some of those incidences.
Yeah. There were some areas where we baited bears because some of the canyons were so deep. would be on the top area, it'd be about 8,500 feet, and it would drop down quick to about 5,500 feet, and it was some steep canyons. And so we'd put baits on there to bring the bears in. And in one area, a lot of the older guys said, man, use beavers. And in this lower area, we have such a beaver problem that we would trap beavers, or we'd go and kill where they had beaver problems, and we would take it down there to use it to bait the bears in, because the older generation would tell us use that. They bring them in, and we'd always use just innards of cows, so it wouldn't leave a mess. Because majority of the time when a bear or any predator eats on an animal, they go for the high protein, which is the liver, kidneys, and all that, and the heart. They go for those first, and and the bear. So we used to use that all the time. And so what we had done, we stuck two beavers in a tree about 10 feet high in the tree. We backed the truck up and got on the hood and nailed the beaver up and tied it up so that bear would have a hard time getting at it. And we did it that morning, and we went back that next day, and our bait can that we had stuff in it was completely, and we put a good sized rope around this tree to hold that barrel up, and it had tore that barrel completely off that. And the only thing that was left on those beaver was just the tail, which is what was about 10 feet. But we couldn't figure out how it got to that beaver, because there was no, if a bear goes up a tree, you can see the claw marks going up. It'll leave something, some kind of mark. We couldn't find anything at all. Just before that, we had some big bears coming into those areas. So we thought, all right, we've got a good bear. And so we put that there. And after that incident happened, where that whole barrel got ripped off, thrown down off the hill, and those beavers taken, we had set it all back up, and nothing came in at all. Everything just completely, no bears, no nothing. So we end up moving, and we had things happen like that before. Is we'd have bait barrels, and something would come in and rip our barrels completely off the tree. Nothing, no bears would ever come back in. They would have just avoid that area. And before, we would have bears coming in, and after whatever would come in, tear those barrels out, and we wouldn't have any bears coming anymore. But we did get one. We had trail camera on one, and we had the trail camera up on one bait area, and it was about 7 feet high. And we just assumed it was a bear bringing its arm around and ripped the camera, spun the camera clear around on that tree. But we kind of, after we thought about it, it's like, man, that's one huge bear to stand up and just pull the camera completely around it. And that's all we had, because it damaged it. It just smashed the camera. It was just a big, hairy arm that went around there. No bite marks, no nothing on it. It just smashed our camera. And it tore the barrels off the trees, threw them down the gully. We stopped going to those places because nothing would ever come in after that incident happened.
What's your take on the trail cam? Because I've heard that before, and I've seen videos to where it doesn't look like a bear. It looks like a hairy arm ripping the trail camera off. And it seems like when people have Sasquatch around their property, the moment you start putting up trail cams everywhere, all activity stops. I find that odd. I find that very strange. What's kind of your take on that?
That was one of the only times that, we'd rarely use trail cameras, because we did a lot of stuff from tracks, and we would soften the dirt up, and we did a lot of our hunts based off the size of the track. But this one, we could never get, something would come in and just throw our barrel around. And I told the guys, I want to get a freaking picture of this. What is doing this? It's not leaving much of sign. And so we put a trail camera up, and that next day, the sucker, it was completely ripped around, spun around, and it was crushed. And the only thing we got out of it looked like it was just a big black hairy arm reached around behind it. And then after that, it came around and put its palm or something over the trail camera. And then that was the last one thing we had. And it was completely smashed.
Yeah, it's weird, man. I mean, as far as why we can't get them on trail cams, they're that good to come up behind trail cams. And I've seen many trail cam pictures like that where it looks like a hairy arm is taking down the trail cam. Was there any other incidences that happened to you when you were out baiting bears?
Yeah, there was one other one. We had was doing a bear guiding, and we got some big bears in some of those areas down there, and we had been chasing it. And the guy brought dogs in. They were top notch dogs. Like I think there was 5 or 6 of them, and very expensive dogs. And he brought them in just because we knew we was going to be going after some big bear. And we got on a trail on one. It had taken off. We'd been chasing it for quite a while, and it went off down a canyon. And we took off down a canyon, and we were on foot. We got up on top and was taking a breather, and we had one of those. The dogs had their collars on, and to show on GPS where they're at, what they're doing. It went off this really steep canyon, and we had seen the bear track, and it was huge. We went off the edge, and all of a sudden we could hear them barking almost on the bottom. And then we all of a sudden it got quiet, completely nothing. And the guy was looking at his GPS unit, and he's like, well, they show that it has the bear baying, and it's there. And I was like, well, why ain't we hearing any barking? And so we dove off, and we went off the canyon. And he goes, there's somewhere around here, but the canyon was so steep, the GPS was bouncing off the canyon walls. So we start looking, and we couldn't find anything. Then the dogs, all of them, completely stopped barking. And if you've been around hounds, they're pretty mean dogs. They're crazy. They go after,
they never quit.
A dog, yeah. And so we went off, and we couldn't find anything. And we looked all morning, afternoon, couldn't find any dogs. And we was like, what is going on? We can't find them. And the signal, they're still in the canyon, but we can't find the signal. And it could have kept bouncing off the canyon walls. And we were like, and it was getting dark. And the guy didn't want to leave, and I don't blame him. He didn't want to leave his dogs down there. But we couldn't find them, and they weren't barking. And that was his last day. And so we left, and we got out of there. And then I got a call about 2 or 3 months later. He had gone back in the areas where we had been. He said, I found my dogs. I said, what? And he goes, yeah, I went back from a different direction, and I was getting a signal. I was getting a signal again. So I went back up in the bottom of the canyon, and I found pieces of my dogs. And then I said, why, what happened? And he goes, it looked like the bear. He goes, that's all I can think it was. Killed my dogs and shoved them under a big rock. And I said, a bear wouldn't do that. A bear wouldn't shove 5 dogs under a big rock and push them up under a big rock. He goes, yeah, it looked like they were just shoved completely under this big, huge rock and was covered. And the only reason I found it was because some other, maybe like coyote or some kind of critter, had dug those bones out, and they were laying across, and one of his track collars were laying out. And I just said, especially a bear killing all the dogs, like almost all at the same time. And I didn't, when that one's a weird one.
That is a weird one, and I know you're speculating, but do you think it was one of these creatures that killed all those dogs? Because you're right, a bear's not going to kill them all.
Yeah, and that's all I could get is, is because I've seen those dogs in action, and if they don't want to get caught by a bear, they're not gonna. They'll run, and they're pretty fast. But how a bear got all 5 or 6 dogs in one little thing and kill them, and he said the bones were just smashed and shoved them underneath the rock like it was something that and I know bears will bury their kill, but to shove them underneath a rock, that was kind of odd too.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. It's a really strange case. You're right. Bears, they're not going to dump it under a rock like that. Roland, I was telling you before, you should write a book. I could sit and listen to you talk about your life all night. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come back. I know a lot of fans wanted you to come back, and even talking about the abduction thing, that happened to you earlier in your life. I know it wasn't easy, but I really do appreciate you taking the time to talk about that. Because there has been other people I've talked to off the air, and I'm at a loss as far as what's going on. But I really do appreciate your time, and thank you so much for coming back on.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. You hear so many people saying it does help. It does help to talk about it and get it out. I don't, there's a time where you didn't even want to say anything, and it's still kind of like I'm still kind of weary on it at times.
Yeah, I think talking helps. I think for your own sanity, and then people who've had weird things happen to them throughout their life, they hear you talk and they realize they're not alone. Weird things have happened to them, and sometimes we feel like we're alone, like we're the only ones experiencing it. But I really appreciate it again. Thank you so much, Roland.
Yeah, no problem, Wes.
And that's it for tonight, everyone. Remember, if you've had an encounter, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. And if you get a chance, check out sasquatchchronicles.com. You can become a member and get additional shows. Until next time, everyone.